Very excited to have this conversation about what role meat plays in a plant-forward future. I want to also make a disclaimer that we started off the day with these 2 vegan demos and are following it up with this discussion on meat and with respect all throughout. So this is, I know that sometimes these discussions can be contentious, but have all the love and respect for what Kate and Priyanka are doing, and just very excited to be able to have this conversation with 2 people who I very much respect. So I'm going to ask Michele first, and we'll have her, she has just a few slides, to introduce yourself to the audience and also to tell us about the work that you do.
Well, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here and have this conversation with all of you, because this is really the work that I think we're all endeavoring to do, is hear each other out, say what we want to say, and find some common ground. So my name is Michele Thorne. I'm the Executive Director of the Good Meat Project. And the Good Meat Project, we're on a mission to catalyze marketplace innovation, connection, and education across the meat supply chain in order to increase economic viability and ecological impact of livestock farmers who invest in healthy land, animals, and people. That is our mission. We also provide education and technical assistance, resources, and tools to not only connect with these same stakeholders, farmers, ranchers, butchers, chefs, and eaters, but we also provide the platforms for all of those stakeholders, like all of you, to connect with each other. So I don't know why the 6 is in there, but let's just roll with it. That wasn't in my version of the slides, but we'll keep going. So the Good Meat Project is in its 10th year this year, and a lot of the work that we do is anchored in our values, which are transparency. That is our #1 core value, because we insist that people have easy access to information about the meat that they're eating, and those are the rest of our core values, which you can go on our website and see. I want to just talk a little bit about our programs. We have our Farm-In program, which is our Farmer and Rancher Marketing Innovation Network, where we serve good meat businesses and farmers and producers. In our Bacon program, we directly serve butchers, butcher shops, and chefs who produce, distribute, and sell good meat to consumers. And our Good Meat Breakdown is our consumer-facing portal for information for educating consumers. We also have a few initiatives, our Women's Good Meat Network, where we support women in the industry who are often unseen, unheard, but doing amazing things in the meat industry. And a few years ago, we integrated the Grass-Fed Alliance into our work, which is kind of part of the research that we do on grass-fed and responsible meat production as it pertains to consumers. And that's it. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn that off, but.
No, that's okay. And Rob, if you can talk a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So my name is Rob Levitt. I'm the chef and head butcher at Public and Quality Meats in Chicago. I started cooking because I needed a job. I actually started as a dishwasher, and then through going to CIA in Hyde Park and working for some good people, I discovered that the best food comes from small farms. And I was lucky to have some great mentors along the way and work with some great people. And eventually my wife and I opened our own restaurant. We were the first restaurant in Chicago to have a whole animal program. And I sort of inadvertently learned that the best way to work with farmers is to either buy whole animals or to ask them, what do you have that nobody else wants? And because of that, we got a good reputation for cooking less common things, whether it's a less common cut of meat or whether it's offal, but not treating it as this like hot, like buzzy thing, but more like this is a great piece of meat from a small farm, and we should treat it like anything else, and you should eat it like any other cut of meat. And it worked for us. From there, we decided to open a butcher shop. we had a teeny tiny little butcher shop. We didn't really know what we were doing at first, but we knew that we wanted to work with farms. And the idea was that there were a lot of great restaurants in Chicago that were working with farmers and that were putting this amazing pork and beef and lamb and chicken on their menus. And we wanted to be the place where you could go to buy those things to cook at home. So we opened up a little butcher shop. We worked same way with farms. We either bought whole animals or we bought pieces and parts that they couldn't move. And eventually that led me to where I am now, which is Public and Quality Meats, where I am able to fill a case full of amazing, beautiful raw meats. I'm able to turn all of the animals that I butcher into deli meats and salumi and charcuterie. I've got a cafe where I can put all of those things on sandwiches with bread from our bakery, Public and Quality Bread. I'm able to cook. I'm able to bring farmers in and do farm dinners and work with other producers and other great chefs that are like-minded. And ultimately, it leads me to be able to do things like this. And one of the most important things I like to say is that I didn't get into butchering because I think butchering is cool. I do. But I got into it because I wanted to try and do a little bit of the right thing, where I'm developing relationships with the people who are growing and raising the food that my community is going to eat. It's led me to work with a lot of great people. I'm very excited to be working with Michele. She's amazing, and I believe that it's true. But I believe that this discussion will be an opportunity for me to talk about it from like the customer-facing side, and for Michele to talk about it from the sort of more big picture side, and for us to put our ideas together. It's weird to be here as the meat people and feel like we're the minority. And I think it's a good discussion to have because it's plant forward and not plant based. And I think that's important.
Yeah, so as I told you both, we'll jump right in. So when it comes to climate change and human health, meat production and consumption are often portrayed as public enemy number one now. For example, articles with titles such as "Beef is bad for the climate, but how bad?" in PBS, "Global elimination of meat production could save the planet" from Berkeley News in 2022, and in 2023, "Our addiction to meat is killing the planet. It's time for change," which was in The Hill. Key among the criticisms are that meat production accelerates deforestation, that animal-based foods overall are more resource-intensive than plant-based foods, cow burps emit a high amount of methane and contributes to a worsening environment, and concern for climate change puts forth that we could meet certain emissions goals if we eliminate meat entirely. So I wonder, in a conference such as this, where we're encouraging a plant-forward approach to cooking, and as we're seeing younger generations who rightfully so are very concerned about our future, is there a future role for meat on the menu? And how do you respond to the criticisms?
Respectfully, it's baloney. It's irresponsible. I think that the facts show that, sure, livestock does account for greenhouse gas emissions. There's no debating that, and I want to be on record to admit that. Livestock production does contribute to that. But also, transportation, oil, gas contributes to about 80% of that carbon, emissions in the United States. Livestock, in comparison, according to the EPA, emits 4%. So there's nuance here. There's no all meat is bad and we have to stop doing that, because it's a little disingenuous. A lot of communities survive on meat products around the world, right? Meat is a part of culture in many countries. It is nutrient dense. A lot of people rely on meat for things that they can't get from vegetables, like B12 vitamins, which are mostly found in fermented foods and meat products, which are important for lubricating the neurotransmitters in our brains and helping our bodies function optimally. I think taking animals off the land is equally disingenuous. We need to have animals on the land. 2/3 of the land in agricultural production cannot be used for growing crops for human consumption. It can only be used to graze livestock, and livestock is very efficient at converting that cellulose into consumable human protein that is nutritionally dense. And so I think it is a very nuanced conversation, and I think meat gets a bad rap, unfortunately, because it's getting lumped in with the big industrial agricultural producers, which are really to blame for a lot of the irresponsible management of manure, the irresponsible management of our waterways and our air, and it's just not apples to apples. So that's what I would say to that.
And then Rob, I know too, when we had our briefing.
See what I mean?
Thank you. And this is why we wanted to have this conversation. When we had our briefing call, you said there were a lot of myths that you want to dispel. So along the lines of responding to what Michele has said, you know, what do you want to clear up?
I mean, there's so many things, you know, like I grew up eating margarine, right? How many people grew up eating margarine? You know, we were told it was good for us. You know, my dad called me a couple of years ago and he said, I just saw a thing on PBS that grilling meat's going to give you cancer. You should not grill meat anymore. You know, there's just so many things out there, and we have to deal with these things like issue by issue. And I'm lucky that, you know, if I have guests that come into my butcher shop and ask me about something they read in the news or something they saw on TV, then I can have these conversations with them respectfully and oftentimes tell them that they're wrong and that here's the actual information. I think that, you know, there are a lot of things about meat that are good, and I think that, you know, it's all about educating people on what those things are, why they're good for their communities, and how, and I think like the real work is sort of dispelling whatever these little things are that come up, but then also working on how to get better quality stuff to more people. I think that a lot of the talk about plant-based foods, it all sounds really good until you really kind of break down what those are. And I know a lot of work is being done to make plant-based foods healthier, but if you look at a plant-based burger versus a burger that came from a locally raised cow, you know, one of them is going to be much healthier for you. I think that when we talk about the discussion in nutrition and how to take care of people, whether it's in, you know, like I work in a butcher shop that is a very boutique shop in a very bougie community, and I have people who can afford whatever they want, whenever they want, but that's not the case for everybody. The easiest way to get nutrition out into places where there is low access to food is oftentimes through good meat. It's something that people are comfortable with, it's something that people know how to cook, and it's something that I think can provide a more nutritious diet versus trying to go into a community and say, here's an Impossible Burger or something like that, because it's not healthy. It's like it's. Go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of dovetail on that. There was a study that came out through the Bionutrient Institute with Stephen Vliet, who's a researcher, and he did a nutritional panel analysis of a ground beef grass-fed burger and a plant-based burger. And the point that he was making in his analysis was that these two consumers read nutrition labels, and we take this information and we make decisions about what to eat, right? But what is kind of behind the scenes there, and maybe a little bit disingenuous, is that these two products are not nutritionally interchangeable. And the reason that is because beef, grass-fed beef, specifically in this example, the nutrient metabolites outshine any of the metabolites found in this comparative product. And how that impacts the body is very significant. I think this is the crowd that really cares about nutrient density. And so when we're talking about alternatives, we can't, exchange. It's not an easy, equal exchange to say, oh, well, I'm just going to give up beef and I'm going to have a plant-based burger. Nutritionally, there are impacts that come with that. There's trade-offs with everything, right? And so I think it's really important.
For me, what I like best about the program is the diversity in
products. They're not nutritionally interchangeable. That's really important.
Also, something that came up in our discussions is that we all three have spent a good portion of our lives as vegans or vegetarians. Michele was a raw food chef, wrote a book on it. And so I am wondering in part if that experience has influenced the way you look at meat, what that sort of transition was, and do people who farm and ranch and consume meat, are they also, do ethics and values come into place? And Rob, maybe you can kick us off for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ethics and values come into place in everything we do. I think part of the discussion is, we come to these conferences and we look at things through a microscope or through such a narrow focus, and we forget that there's a big world out there full of decisions to be made, and there is no perfect system. I was a vegetarian for a long time, and I was telling Michele yesterday that at some point I realized that I didn't really have a good reason to be a vegetarian. A lot of the reasons that I thought were there have been dispelled. I was like, oh, well, if I stop eating meat, then I personally am going to save the rainforests. And now I know that that's not true. I think that what I have learned is that good meat, eating good quality meat from the farms that I use tastes good, and I don't feel terrible after I eat it. I also love telling people that, yes, I'm a butcher, and yes, I can break down a 1,000-pound carcass, and I can do all these things, and I can sell steaks, and I don't eat that much meat. People are shocked. They think I'm eating T-bones, 6 nights a week. Yeah, it's funny, but like my regular everyday diet at home and at work, and my wife is part of this, and my daughter has been brought up this way, it's very balanced. We did a dinner with a bunch of guest chefs, and my dish was a piece of bread from our bakery, which is amazing, a few slices of pancetta, and the pancetta was made by me from a pig that was raised, on grass, on pasture, and it was really, really wonderful and flavorful. And then a big pile of grilled vegetables and preserved mushrooms, and we made a vinaigrette with wild nettles, and it was mostly vegetarian, probably mostly vegan, but a few slices of pancetta. My wife makes the most amazing minestrone, and she starts it with a little bit of sausage or a little bit of bacon or something like that. And that's how we eat most of the time. I very rarely have a big pork chop or a big steak or something like that on the plate. And, once in a while, it's fun to fire up the grill and throw a axe handle ribeye on there. But that's not how we should be eating all the time, and everything should be in balance. I feel like better quality meat is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck, and it makes it easier than you think to eat well.
So what we're going to transition. Rob's going to do a demo. So I'm going to ask Rob to go back. Where's Rebecca? And we'll start your demo in a couple minutes while I ask Michele a question from the audience. And where is that question? Okay.
I'll cut my demo short so she can talk more.
Well, and then what we're going to do is Michelle's going to have keep her microphone. We'll move these chairs out of the way, and then we'll be able to ask questions while you're demoing.
Great.
So Michele, someone is asking, what efforts for pasture-raised ranchers to scale up for accessibility and greater economical and ecological impacts exist?
That is the million-dollar question. Scaling, right, and making it economically viable for the farm or the farmer and rancher but also making it affordable for consumers? That is the million-dollar question. I've talked with a couple of people while I've been here, and I talk about this a lot when I go to conferences. It really is one of the challenges, and I think part of the reason why it is a challenge, because in economics there's a thing called equilibrium, and suppliers want to grow their businesses like any entrepreneur in here. If there are there entrepreneurs in here? Of course, right? You want to scale your business because you want to stay in business. In order to stay in business, you need to be profitable. And so I think producers that are kind of in the middle, that we call them meat in the middle producers, right? They're not at that industrial scale, but they're also not homesteaders, right? They're actually producing products that they're selling either into their community, into the region, some even nationally. And being able to scale takes infrastructure. It takes economic infrastructure, it takes labor, it takes space when you're raising livestock. And it is very difficult when you can't take advantage of economies of scale. And sometimes the large agribusinesses, because of their size, they get to take advantage of a lot of the government programs and the subsidies. For example, I talk to ranchers and farmers about this all the time in the state of Oregon, which is where I live. And in our state, and it's like this in many states, where farmers and ranchers will take their animals to the processing facility and actually have to pay to dispose of the offal, which is the waste product. Whereas in large CAFOs, however you say it, I say CAFOs, I know it's CAFOs though. Those facilities, they get to take advantage of subsidized programs, right? And so economically, right there, the cost for smaller producers, their cost of production is higher, which is why they have to pass that on to the consumer. And so I've talked to a lot of ranchers and farmers who struggle with this, especially tribal producers, people in communities where they want to feed their community, make it economical for the people, the customers, the community, right? Even Rob, like we talked about this yesterday.
Can I say one?
Yes, please.
So, along the lines of what she's saying, I often have, I often have people come in who've never been to my store before and don't really know what we're all about, and they say, is your meat prime? And I try and tell them that that USDA label that's supposed to guarantee quality is really something that the farmer has to pay for. And I think that's something that people don't know, is that grading scale regulates the price of meat, but it's something that a farmer has to pay for. So a giant company can afford to pay for that so that they can call something prime and sell it for a higher price. My farmers don't want to do that because they don't want to spend the money. So I'm going to tell my customer that my meat is not graded, but I guarantee you it is going to be as good as any high choice or prime meat you get in the supermarket, probably better. And they have to decide whether or not they want to believe me.
Yeah. And I want to let Rob kind of take the stage, but I will conclude the economic discussion with, I think, one of the best ways to kind of meet the demand of consumers who want to be flexitarian and you want to enjoy some good meat from time to time, whether you want to do it all the time or you want to do it some of the time, none of the time, or whatever. I think one of the best ways for chefs and restaurateurs specifically, and institutions, is to be able to source locally, to be able to capitalize on whole animal utilization. It is one of the most efficient ways to increase your profit margins because you are buying in bulk. And I can talk for hours about that, but I will conclude there, and I will turn it over to Rob for his amazing lamb demo.
Thank you, Chef. So obviously this is a conversation that means a lot to me, and discussing it with Michele is just kind of re-energized me, and I'm pretty energized. So one of the things, we talk a lot about there's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's a lot of terms and ideas that we latch onto, and we talk about being a whole animal butcher shop, or we talk about being a whole animal restaurant, and that's great when you can do it. But I think the bigger question, the way that we can make a bigger impact is thinking about the farm as a whole and thinking about the farmer and the rancher as a whole. So when we had our restaurant, we bought whole pigs, whole lamb, chickens, ducks, rabbits, all the things that we could handle. But the way we dealt with beef, well, it was just, I wasn't a good enough butcher to deal with whole beef. I didn't have enough space. I didn't have enough people in my kitchen. So I would ask the farmers, what do you have that nobody else wants? And I think that's an important question to ask. If you're working directly with farmers, it's an important question to ask them, because it's great when you can take a whole animal, but it might mean more to them if they have a lot of fresh hams, or they have a lot of beef hearts, or whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be offal. You never know. Like, I ran a restaurant for years where I had a farmer who could never seem to sell hanger steaks, which seems crazy now because it's so popular, but a long time ago it wasn't. So I would get all these hanger steaks. It was great. One of the cuts that I learned about that way was lamb neck. I would have farmers say, I have all these lamb necks, the heads go to whatever, and we sell all these other pieces and parts, but we have, they cut these necks and we have nothing to do with them, and we can't grind them. So that's how I learned about it. It's how I learned about so many of the things that I cook and so many of my favorite cuts. And then, whenever we would butcher whole lamb, the neck was like the prized piece, and we would save them. I would put them in the freezer, and when I had a bunch, I would make something like this dish. So if you've never worked with a lamb neck, I have some down here. It is an amazing cut of meat because it is so, it's very well marbled. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a nice layer of fat, so when you sear it, you get the fat to cook with. But it is so rich and full of natural gelatin that you almost don't even need the meat, because when you have the broth, it's so rich and so lamby and so wonderful that you can use the meat for something else if you want, or you can put it in the dish and, have that. So we start by, basically what we're doing is we're making a very basic braise, but the final dish is going to be very vegetable forward. And the reason I like to do things like this is because when I was a kid, my mother would make brisket. And, there's two kinds of Jewish families, the one where mom makes terrible brisket and the one where mom makes wonderful brisket. My mom, thankfully, made the best brisket ever, still does. But I loved the carrots. She'd buy a bag of the little, baby carrot nubs, and she'd throw them in there while the brisket was braising, and I would eat a little bit of meat, and I would eat as many of the carrots as I could steal away from my mom and my dad. My brother didn't like them because he was weird. I loved him to death, but that's a whole other conversation. But I love it, and so it got me thinking, and I've done this in different ways throughout my entire career, is vegetables cooked in meat juices is just such a wonderful way to eat vegetables. And I think that if you're thinking about ways to be plant forward but still have meat, using animal fats to cook vegetables, using animal stocks and broths to glaze vegetables is just a wonderful way to combine these things. And you can let the vegetable be the star, and you can let the meat take the back seat, and you wind up with something that is really delicious and really interesting, and you can get a lot of very cool flavors and textures out of that. So for this dish, we start out very basic. We cut our lamb neck into pieces. If you're doing large batches, you can leave the necks whole. Like when I do something at the restaurant, I'm cooking 8, 10, 12 lamb necks at a time, so I sear them whole and cook them that way. But in this case, since we're just doing a small piece, we've cut them into these little kind of almost like steaks, and we sear them in a hot pan. We get some of this fat rendered out, and we get some nice caramelization on the meat. Once we have that going, we add some chopped onions and some chopped garlic, and we cook them down, and you can see they've done all the wonderful work for me. We kind of get this base going. So, do that right? I'm not used to them turning on the first time. I have a 20-year-old stove in my kitchen. So we get our onions and our garlic going, and then from there we add some seasoning. And because this dish is kind of leaning a little bit towards like Moroccan cooking, we have Ras Al Hanout. Thanks. I space out a little bit in front of a crowd sometimes. So spice blend, you don't have to use this. You can use whatever you want. I just really love the flavor, especially with lamb. So kind of in the same way Priyanka did hers, thank you, we get our base going, and then we stir these in and get them toasted in the lamb fat and the onions and the garlic, and then you have this wonderful base, and it's like just within seconds you can start to smell the sweet spices, then eventually you get that nice earthy kind of undertone, and it just layers up so much flavor. So once we get that going, yeah, so we have that's this, right? Yeah, so the tomatoes go in, and you get that in there, stir it all up, and then I like to let this cook down, and I like to let it cook way down, almost to the point to where it's going to burn. Like when the other cooks on the line are kind of looking like this, like he's going to mess it up. That's when you're ready. In the interest of time, I'm going to not do that, but we'll cook all this down, and then we'll add broth. And you can, if you have lamb stock, use it. If not, use something like, use chicken stock or use whatever you have. You can even use water. Or vegetable stock. You know, I know that we talk a lot about zero waste or low waste, so if you have vegetable scraps and you want to roast them and make a vegetable stock, that would be great in here. So we bring this up to a simmer, and then we return the lamb to the pan. And you can do this on the stovetop, or you can do this, in the oven, you know, low oven, 300 degrees for a long, slow time. We'll cover it. Thank you. This is, can you want to come and do this at work? You get that all the time, don't you? I'm sure. Sorry. So this has been simmering, braising for several hours now. And like I said, basic braise. We're not reinventing anything here. So we're going to take that out, and you can see it's just kind of wobbly and wonderfully gelatinous and not at all weird. Like, I think people hear neck. My mother is one of those people who she said, "What did you cook?" And I said, "I made a pasta sauce with lamb neck." And she goes, "Ugh." And then I pull a piece off like this and make her eat it, and she's like, "Oh, that's delicious." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So, once this cools so that it's, cool enough to handle, you can just pull these pieces right off. And, I mean, it just falls off of there like nothing. And even just touching it, like, you can feel the richness, and it's just so like rib sticking and lip smacking and all those other words that make food sound as good as it should be. So we have our broth, our sauce, and you can see, I don't know if you got a shot of that, but like this hasn't even cooked like the full amount of time. Like we didn't reduce as much, but just based on cooking that rich lamb neck, you can see just the texture of this broth is so intense and delicious. Thank you. They're good. So what we're going to do now is we are going to make this truly, in my opinion, a plant-forward dish. So we have these beautiful vegetables, right? That's the other thing that I get to do is I get to call my produce farmers who I've known for years, and I get to say, what do we have right now? What's really fun? What's really delicious? And sometimes it's a new potato. And when a farmer gets excited about something as basic as a potato, then you should take their word for it. Because these little potatoes are so sweet and so wonderful and creamy. And if you can get your vegetables all cut down to very similar sizes like this, then they're all going to cook at about the same time. And as long as things like potatoes are cooked through, then if the turnips and the carrots still have a little bit of bite to them, that's okay. So we're gonna put in a handful of each of these, and a few of these carrots. I would probably cut these just a little bit smaller, just to try and keep everything uniform, and to consider that because this is more or less a stew, we're going to want to keep things kind of relatively bite-sized.
Can I jump in with a question here?
Sure.
So we have a group of students from Idaho. All right, yeah, let's represent. So these are the next generation of food service professionals. We're super excited that you came here, that you're with us. Thank you. So what I want to ask a question on behalf of them, which is, what advice do you have for them in building relationships with farmers and producers. How do they go about doing that? What kinds of questions are they asking? What are they looking for? What's important in that relationship?
I think the important thing is build the relationship. You know, if you put out the effort to find a farmer, then they're going to be more than happy to answer any questions. Go visit a farm. Go visit a slaughterhouse. Go do things that are unfamiliar and outside your comfort zone, but go and visit a farm and ask questions. I don't have a list of questions for you. Look around and ask whatever comes to mind. Ask them about.
I've got a list of questions you could ask.
Yes.
But everything that you said, talk to the farmer, go visit a farm, talk to a butcher, you know, nearby. Ask them, hey, what are your practices? How much land do you have? How are you improving your soil? Are your livestock, you know, grazing rotationally? Are they in paddocks? Like, ask the questions. Farmers and ranchers are some of the most direct people you'll ever meet in your life. They'll tell you exactly what you want to know, and they'll tell you more, because most farmers and ranchers that are doing this work are really proud of what they do. They are working really hard. Have any of you students ever been on a farm for a day, like doing the chores? Tell me, is it hard work? Yes. Okay. It's hard work, and it is an all day, every day, no matter what the weather is, cold, hot, muddy, nice, not nice, you know, it's a lot of work. And farmers and ranchers, they take a lot of heat, but they are the ones producing our food. And so as a producer myself, I love talking to young people about what I do, about the practices that I'm using, why those are important to me, how they're improving the soil. These are all really great questions that you can ask directly to farmers and ranchers, and asking butchers, hey, where do you source your meat from? What kind of cuts do you have this week? Could you get a whole carcass for me? You know? Or show me how to break it down. Show me what you do. Validate with your eyes. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to not like what you see, but it's okay to also ask questions to trust and verify.
Yeah, it's a good point. It really begs the question, do you feel like you should be working with meat? If you go to a farm and you don't like the process of getting it from a live animal to something on the plate, then that's a pretty important question to ask yourself. I think, you know, to recognize how hard farmers work, whether they're raising animals or whether they're raising turnips, you know, it's a relationship that means more to me than, you know, than anything else that I do. Is like my main farmers I've known, like one of them I think I started working with like 15, 16, 17 years ago. Actually, several of them. You know, when we opened our restaurant, we started dealing with working with certain farms that I still work with, and even before that, as a sous chef. I mean, really, my entry into this whole thing was as a sous chef, and I worked for a chef who did high volume. We worked in a hotel. We had a pre-theater, and he didn't care. We were getting giant crates full of potatoes and onions and garlic, like, you know, things that were staples that you'd think you just get from a broadliner. We were getting from farms, and it really made an impact. So, you know, not taking the ingredients that you use for granted is a very important lesson. You know, I think everybody, well, maybe not anymore, but like when I was in culinary school, the French Laundry Cookbook had just come out, and there was this whole section on the importance of rabbits. And he talked about working for a chef who gave him a whole live rabbit. Of course, it was whole, it was live. But he gave him these rabbits, and he was like, this is tomorrow night's special, and he had to figure out how to take a live rabbit and turn it into dinner. And it's a pretty brutal lesson, but you know, it made him realize that if he's going to take this thing's life, then he has to make sure that every bit of it gets used and that every bit of it gets cooked properly and that you respect the ingredients. And you know, it's not just about meat, it's about everything. You know, like when you connect with the person that's out in the field, bent over, pulling carrots out of the ground, then you're going to want to make sure you don't overcook that carrot. You're going to want to make sure you do something really special with that carrot so that when somebody eats it, they think to themselves, why is this so delicious? Why is this better than what I get at the supermarket?
And I'm going to just jump in here because we have just a couple minutes left. So I want you to be able to finish your demo. You have 30 seconds, go. This is where we turn it into a cooking competition.
Yes, no, so the rest of this is really easy. So we have our amazing broth. We have our little wonderful locally sourced vegetables that are now simmering and tender and ready to go. And the last thing we do is I have some chickpeas. Chickpeas are very healthy. I also just really like them. So putting some of those in there. And then we have some kale that we've kind of shredded up. You can use any greens you like, but I really like these. They're delicious. We'll stir that through. And then once those have kind of wilted down, we can take all the lamb neck meat that we have picked. So when you pick through this, you have bones and you have fat and you have meat. Meat goes in as much or as little as you want, but don't use the leftover bones. Make a stock, make a broth, make something that you can use to cook the next round of lamb necks or shanks or whatever, or to make a sauce. And use the fat. Take it and roast it really hard, and you get all this, lamb fat on its own is kind of gnarly. If you roast it, then it smells like roasted lamb, and then it's delicious. And cook vegetables in it, and it's wonderful. Okay, so it's all come together now, and we have this kind of amazing vegetable-forward, lamb-based stew. And can you guys smell it? It smells so good. So I often serve this with rice. You can serve it with my friend Abra, who's up there, who, go and watch her cook and speak in anything. She's amazing. But she was just telling me about some local buckwheat that she has on her farm. That with this would be so delicious, or any kind of grain, anything you can get. So, thank you. So we're just going to very simply put a little bit of rice in our bowl. And then we will get a little bit of everything in there. We've got turnips, we've got potatoes, we've got kale. And then since we have these nice big carrots, we might as well put them on top to make it look extra pretty. Because food can be pretty even when it's kind of ugly like this. And then kind of dig onto the bottom and get some of that broth. I think the real star of the show of this dish is the broth. It's the sauce, the juice. It's that base flavor. And it soaks into the rice and it soaks into the vegetables. And the meat becomes like a consolation prize. Not really. I mean, the meat's delicious. But it's not the most important thing here. The most important thing is how it all kind of comes together. I mean, that's a pretty nice bowl of food. And that doesn't look like anything unusual. But the things that I've kept in mind is that I'm using a piece of meat that's not that common, but it appears to be pretty normal. And that there's just so many wonderful vegetables and they all work together. So I like to garnish this with a little bit of toasted almonds. Lamb and almonds I think I just really like together. And then this is pomegranate molasses. It's kind of sweet and sour. I think it goes with those Moroccan spices really nicely. It adds just a little bit of dimension to the dish. So I just put a little bit of drizzle of that over the top, just for fun. And that's it.
Thank you.
I'm Michele. I'm a sous chef here at Dirt Candy, and today we are going to make the spring roll rangoon. So it starts with a salad. Here we have some torn zucchini. It is the byproduct of the zucchini roll making process. And then we also add in some bamboo, as well as some fresh peeled and minced garlic, a little bit of chopped bean sprouts. And then we add in a mix of herbs. So we have Thai basil, cilantro, scallions, and mint here. And then to finish it, we add fresh squash blossoms. And then we have a dressing here that is made with a vegan fish sauce, as well as Thai chilies, a little bit of palm sugar, and lime juice. throw a little bit of that in the bowl. Then just mix it gently. And then we grab our ring here. Put it in the center of our plate. Throw in some salad. Then we take our shell, which has been made out of zucchini. We deep fried it. It gets just a small amount of cornstarch on it, and then it makes this beautiful, almost wonton-like shell. And then we also make a cream cheese with Thai chilies and squash blossoms. There's more zucchini, tons of white pepper to be kind of like the crab rangoon filling. And we just fill both sides like that. Make sure it's flat. Place it right on top of our salad. And then if we didn't have enough fresh herbs already, we put a little bit of micro Thai basil right on top. And here is the zucchini spring roll rangoon.